About 10 years ago, I made a monumental mistake. I ended up making out with a female friend. Although there was no contact below the waist, it was still a significant breach of trust in my marriage. My wife and I worked through this issue with a lot of effort, and I never repeated such a mistake. In the years that followed, it never came up in our arguments again. As far as I knew, we had both moved past it. Yet deep down, I was aware that my wife had never completely forgotten. After that incident, things were good. A few years later, I stopped drinking, which further improved our relationship. Over the next decade, our lives flourished. Our marriage grew stronger. Our intimacy blossomed. Aside from the occasional routine arguments, these were the best years our marriage had ever seen. Around a year ago, my wife and I started to explore new things in the bedroom and introduced adult content into our love life. I noticed she was particularly aroused by lesbian content, which led us to explore that area further. 6 months later, she finally opened up and admitted that she is bisexual and attracted to women. Other than a brief makeout session during her college years in her early 20s, she had never been intimate with a woman. Currently, my wife is enrolled in a graduate program in the USA, located about 90 miles from our home. She commutes daily, which means her personal life and school life are quite separate. She has made wonderful friends and has become particularly close to one of them. Due to the distance, I have never met this friend in person, though I have seen a picture of her. This summer, my wife accepted an invitation to a month-long program at a university in Europe. She left 2 weeks ago and will be gone until the end of the month. She is there alone, but there are other people she knows from her school, including her close friend. During this time, she had several 3-day weekends and decided to visit some places during these breaks. She spent weeks planning which cities to sightsee, and this past weekend she went to Amsterdam. Since I knew about this well in advance, I had no objections. She also mentioned that her friend would be in Amsterdam at the same time, and I thought it would be great for them to hang out together. When my wife arrived in Amsterdam, she called me. She said her friend was delayed until the next day and seemed unusually upset about it. While it's normal to be disappointed when a friend can't make it, her strong reaction struck me as odd. Knowing that she had planned this weekend trip months in advance and paid for it with hotel points, not cash, I didn't think much of it initially. This detail will become important later. The next day, I didn't hear from her at all, which was very unusual. Typically, she texts me at least once or twice during the day. By 2 a.m. in Amsterdam, I decided to video call her. She didn't answer the first call. I waited a few minutes and called again. This time she picked up. She was in a bar, it was loud, and she said she would call me back soon. When she did, she was back at the hotel. I asked if she had a good time, and she said she did and was about to take a shower as soon as her friend got out, and then she froze. She looked like someone who had just said something they shouldn't have. Like a deer caught in headlights. It turned out that not only was her friend in Amsterdam with her, but she was also actually in the shower and staying in the same room. For the past few months, my wife had never mentioned this detail to me. When I realized what was happening, she quickly tried to change the subject and play it down as if it was no big deal. I stayed calm at this point and asked why she hadn't mentioned it before. "Oh, it just slipped my mind," she said. Now I was starting to get really upset that my wife was sharing a hotel room with someone I had never met. Making it worse, she hadn't told me this beforehand. I was angry but decided to talk about it the next day. There was nothing I could do at that moment. I hung up and went to bed. The following day, I didn't hear from her again until late in the evening. She texted me to let me know she had arrived safely in Brussels with her friend. By now, I was furious. I felt deeply disrespected, and the entire situation began to seem very dubious. Curious, I called the hotel in Amsterdam to find out what kind of room she had stayed in. It was a studio room with only one bed, so now I knew my wife had slept in the same bed with a complete stranger I had never met. Now I was livid. Even if nothing intimate happened between them, this was completely inappropriate and unacceptable behavior for me. I felt deeply disrespected as her husband, and I was certain she would not find this acceptable if the roles were reversed. After learning this, I called her. The phone rang for a long time before she finally picked up. It seemed like she had ducked away into an alley or something. She was on a crowded street and appeared to be trying to find some privacy to talk to me away from people. We spoke for about 10 seconds, then someone familiar to her, not a stranger, approached, and she briefly tucked the phone away. I saw her smile as she told me she had to go and would call me back in a few minutes. I didn't get a look at this person, but it was definitely someone she knew. She called back a few minutes later and I confronted her about it. She admitted that they had stayed in the same room and slept in the same bed together after a night out in Amsterdam, which she had tried to hide from me, but assured me that they were just friends. She explained it was a last-minute decision, and they wanted to split the room because it would be cheaper. And then it hit me. Remember how she paid for the room? It was with points. I asked her about this, and she began to stammer. She said, "Oh, there was a co-pay of $50 and she paid half of that." That's what I meant. This seemed incredibly suspicious to me. Then she started to get mad at me, furious that I would even think this whole situation was weird. She insisted I was overreacting and that she had simply forgotten to mention it. She said her friend was just a friend and that I didn't understand her. For the first time ever, she brought up my mistake from 10 years ago and was raging. She had never mentioned it before, but this time she did. I had never seen such anger spewing from my wife's mouth in our entire 14 years of marriage. I was utterly shocked. She spent 10 minutes viciously tearing into me, saying things so hurtful and uncalled for that I don't even want to repeat them. After she finished, I simply told her we would talk about it when she returned in 25 days. The next morning, I woke up to a text message from her apologizing for her outburst, saying she was emotional and did it because she was upset, etc. I didn't respond. It's been 2 days now, and she hasn't tried to contact me again. She has gone completely silent. These past few days have left me deeply reflective. Trust is a delicate commodity, and while we both have our flaws, honesty and respect are the cornerstones of any relationship. I hope we can navigate this crisis together, but at the moment, I am uncertain where our journey will lead.